The Prix Galien is a welcome initiative to stimulate creative research and promote excellence. Barack Obama. The Galien Awards ceremony is considered the equivalent of the Oscars night for the innovators in the labs and awards every year the best pharmaceutical product, the best biotechnology product, the best medical technology, best digital health, best incubator accelerator, best startup.
This is the right event, on the right issue, at the right time.
I thank His Excellency, the President, for bringing Prix Galien to Africa, and I look forward to the day when we will celebrate an African winner of the Prix Galien.
I'm particularly grateful to receive this award.
The awards are among the highest honors in science and commerce because they lead to improvement in the human condition.
The Prix Galien Awards recognize the world's brightest minds and most innovative companies. They are a true celebration of the hard work required to produce life-changing interventions.
That is what makes us optimistic about the future.
Congratulations to all of you.
Make a difference. Join the Galien Foundation.
Welcome, everyone, to this Galien presentation that's about how our systems design and electronics and engineering make an invasive, high-risk medical surgical procedures a thing of the past for these two major killers, which is cardiovascular disease and cancer. Today, I'm Tim Durst. I lead Accenture's global medical technology practice. And we'll talk more about the industry in a minute, but we have a number of distinguished guests here for this panel that I'll have introduce themselves. But as a quick brief, we have Heidi Cole, who's the Assistant VP and R&D of GT Medical Technology, Sylvie Lombardi, Director of R&D and BD, Lynn Ray, VP and GM of Global Respiratory for Olympus, Laxon Suramani, VP R&D Transcatheter Heart Valves at Edwards, and JP Urbanski, Director of Marketing Cardiology at Baylis, which is a part of Boston Scientific now. I'll have each one of them introduce themselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about the trends in healthcare and particularly medical devices and diagnostics and the innovation. And then we'll turn it over and talk about some of the latest innovations that these companies are bringing to the marketplace that, again, are really changing the standard and of care going forward. I'll start with you, Heidi. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Heidi Cole, Associate VP of R&D at GT Medtech. So I've been with the company a little over 3 years, and we've had the opportunity of bringing GammaTile to market, and we've treated over 700 patients in 77 institutions thus far.
Thank you. Lynn?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lynn Ray. I am the General Manager, Vice President of the Global Respiratory Business here at Olympus. I have been with Olympus for 14 years now, and I have had the privilege of managing the respiratory business both in the US and globally for 10 of those years, which has been an incredibly exciting time for healthcare as it relates to lung cancer. The product that we will be introducing today is a special flexible endoscope with an ultrasound tip, which enables the diagnosis and accurate staging of lung cancer, replacing a surgical procedure, which is mediostenoscopy. So thank you, thrilled to be here.
Great. Laxon.
Yes, good morning from the West Coast and good afternoon to everybody on the East Coast. I'm Laxon Suramani, Senior Vice President of R&D for our transcatheter heart valve business. I've been with the company for 20 years, and it's just been this incredible technology where we can replace a heart valve while the heart is beating and the patient is wide awake, and it's about an hour and a half procedure, and you can go home the following day. That's where the technology is. So this morning I'm going to present to you a pulmonic valve system, which is a nitinol-based self-expanding stent, and our SAPIEN 3 transcatheter heart valve.
Thank you, Laxon. JP.
Good morning, everyone, and greetings from Toronto. JP Urbanski, the Director of Upstream Marketing with Baylis Medical, and now a part of the broader Boston Scientific family since we got acquired earlier this year. I'm really pleased to be sharing with everyone today our product nomination in the VersaCross transseptal platform. What this is an access therapy that enables minimally invasive percutaneous procedures both in electrophysiology as well as structural heart. It's really great to be part of the Prix Galien this year, so congratulations to all my fellow panelists and nominees.
Thank you so much, JP. So I wanted to start by setting some context for the industry, and one of the things that we all recognize is that how we're doing healthcare today is not how healthcare is going to be done in the future, and that takes a lot of different contexts. It's new care settings, it's moving out of traditional clinical settings to areas that are like ambulatory surgery centers and further out into home care, and then even broadly with remote patient care and monitoring, or even front end of a consumer journey where they're not even patients, but we're looking at risk factors towards the pathway of becoming a patient in the future, and what can we do from a wellness, et cetera, and effective. So all of this is happening, as we speak, and none of it can really, when we talk about digital health or enabling our therapeutic areas like in cardiovascular, cancer, detection, screening, treatment, all of that is predicated on, frankly, the medical device and diagnostic industry really coming together with the broader, solutions that are very enabled with the core technologies and how we, frankly, have evolved the industry over the years, but bringing on top of that additional artificial intelligence services, AI on top of the data that we're all gathering from our remote connected devices in order to deliver a much better set of outcomes and more efficient outcomes in our particular disease states. And frankly, in cardiovascular and cancer are clearly some of the biggest areas that we've been investing in for years, and that has significantly improved patients' livelihoods. But there's still a recognition that there's a long ways to go, and we're the people that we have on the panel today are really on the forefront of making that innovation happen. I would like to turn it over back to the panelists for a minute to talk a little bit about some of the products, services that they think are the most innovative, that represent the new ways of improving those outcomes in healthcare, and particularly disease states for which they're focused on. And maybe, Heidi, you started us a little bit down that path, but maybe you can continue and give us a little bit more background.
Yeah, so just a little bit more about GammaTile, our product. So at its genesis, this therapy was conceived by a team of brain tumor specialists who were running out of treatment options for their patients. It was really a therapy designed out of desperations to give these patients some more time. So it consists of resorbable collagen tiles that are embedded with radiation sources that are implanted during the last 5 minutes of brain tumor resection. And the beauty of this is that it provides immediate dose-intense treatment to eliminate residual tumor cells right when that tumor burden is the lowest. So this is really a one-and-done procedure that allows these patients to receive their course of radiation while going about their daily lives. That doesn't depend on going back to the hospital multiple times to do additional trips for radiation therapy, which is the current standard of care. So I'll just give a couple more examples about this. When the brain tumor specialists were developing GammaTile, they were especially focused on those challenges presented with the current standard of care. So essentially, there's 3 main pitfalls when it comes to the current standard of care of post-op radiation therapy. The first challenge is really waiting to treat. So before beginning external radiation therapy, the surgical incision must heal. And although this is a 2 to 3 week wait period, a lot can really happen in that time. And you can see in the series of scans that the neurosurgeon was able to complete a clean resection of the tumor, but 3 weeks post-operatively, the tumor is already making a comeback. The second is the fact that the radiation oncologist is left with only post-op scans to plan the external beam radiation therapy. So while modern imaging has helped this, it can really still be a challenge. You can see in this case how difficult it would be to determine basically where the target treatment area should be without thorough consultation with a neurosurgeon. And then just one other point, the third challenge pertains to the dose distribution, which we'll look at here on one more slide. So even with advanced external beam radiation therapy like IMRT or proton beam, the radiation must pass through healthy tissue to reach the tumor bed. This results in unnecessary radiation exposure to healthy tissue, which runs the risk of potential radiation injury. But based on GammaTile's design and delivery mechanism, our therapy delivers precise targeted radiation doses directly to the tumor bed and impacts a much smaller volume in comparison to a larger area of brain impacted by external beam. So because GammaTile limits that adjacent brain impact, retreatment with radiation becomes an option for these patients and also allows that possibility of reoperation. So overall, this is our product. It's been engineered to address the aforementioned challenges. It's a surgically targeted radiation therapy. This is our first product, but it's really serving as a foundation for future systems and platforms to help enhance that surgically targeted radiation approach. So we have 26 issued patents in the United States and OUS. And so we're overall looking at what value can we add to customers moving forward and where can we have the greatest impact as we move forward in additional investments.
That is great. That is a great innovation, Heidi, and it's clear how that is evolving the standard of care and post-operative care and really making sure that also that post-operative understanding is backed into the pre-operative planning that's associated with these surgical procedures, which again is one of the biggest things that we see going on in the industry is leveraging that surgical procedure data and understanding and backing that into, the direct innovations of those products, but even back into the practice and how we manage that patient in a different way, which is a great example. And maybe I'll turn it over to some of our other panelists to kind of feed off of that example and give some things from their vantage point. Maybe Lynn, we could go with you. What would you'd like to talk about here?
Yeah. So Heidi, thank you. That is amazing. And that's why we're all here to talk about innovation for the future. So from Olympus, I'm going to start with the product that we're introducing that's been submitted as a finalist. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the disease state as well, which, clearly that's what really motivates all of us to do what we do every single day. So the finalist product from Olympus is it's what we call the next generation ultrasound bronchoscope. So Olympus is very well known for imaging and flexible endoscopy. We're very focused on lung cancer, colorectal cancer, and other cancers. But in the respiratory business, of course, we're talking about lung cancer. So the product that is submitted is called the BF-UC190F. This is a product that has been pioneered by Olympus and has had numerous iterations and all addressing unmet clinical needs along the way. So this special bronchoscope with an ultrasound tip is used in a procedure called EBUS TBNA, endobronchial ultrasound transbronchial needle aspiration. This is a procedure that was introduced by Olympus. It was early 2000s now. And this was to replace a surgical procedure called mediastinoscopy. And mediastinoscopy would excise the entire lymph node, and this is how lung cancer was staged. So now with the introduction of a endoscope instead, we can do a minimally invasive procedure. It's a flexible bronchoscope. It can be done under conscious sedation. You introduce the bronchoscope into the patient's airways. You visualize lymph nodes, which is outside of the airways under ultrasound. And then you deploy an Olympus needle called the VisiShot TBNA needle through the scope, and you can watch as the needle goes into the lymph node and samples tissues. So the next generation bronchoscope really addresses some of the previous unmet needs, such as flexibility. You can imagine in the mediastinum, it's actually quite difficult to get to some of these anatomical areas, and also is slightly smaller as well, so it reaches further into the lungs. A little bit about the disease state. So lung cancer. I'm going to guess on this call, people are aware of lung cancer and may even unfortunately have relatives who suffered the consequences of lung cancer. So lung cancer is a disease, as a cancer actually kills more people every year globally than the top other 3 cancers. Very surprising. That would be colon, breast, and prostate. In the US alone, in 2021, 235,000 new cases of lung cancers were diagnosed, and 132,000 deaths in the US alone, which is astounding. Clearly an issue for healthcare that needs to be addressed. The problem with lung cancer is often detected at a late stage. There is lung cancer screening now. That was actually in 2012 due to a huge study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. We now have lung cancer screening, but unfortunately, less than 5% of the population are actually getting screening today. Lung cancer, when it's detected, is often a late stage. So where the procedure comes in for EBUS TBNA with this new endoscope, as I mentioned, is that it's accurately stages the mediastinum, because accurate staging, like any cancer, is imperative to treatment, appropriate treatment. And in today, we're all very aware with treatments in any cancer, but in particular lung cancer, is that these special biomarkers, genetic testing, is actually able to determine the patient's pathway for treatment and personalize their treatment as such. So it's very important that we accurately stage, get enough tissue when we stage, so that the patient can get the most appropriate treatment for their cancer to optimize their survival in this awful disease. So that's just a little bit about the product, a little bit about the disease state. Hopefully that gets everybody excited. Happy to give more information as necessary.
Lynn, that's another great example where, you know, you take your core therapeutic and you make the procedure even more simplified and accurate, but then also incorporating, you know, like risk factors of a patient to determine personalized care, as you have with the genetic testing. And, you know, maybe you get into the behavioral side of things too that may have correlations. And so this is a great area of demonstration of bringing that kind of continuum of information to bear on a particular patient. Excellent. Maxon, could you give us a good example?
So Tim, thank you so much. So, you know, there was a time when replacing a heart valve without open heart surgery was nearly unthinkable. And today, transcatheter pulmonic valve replacement is a breakthrough technology that has changed the way surgeons and interventional cardiologists treat structural heart disease. We can now replace the pulmonic valve through a transcatheter approach. And what I mean by transcatheter approach is the patient comes to the hospital in the morning, right there in a hybrid OR or cath lab, and through a really small puncture in the femoral vein, we can thread a specially designed catheter and deploy a pre-stent in the pulmonic artery. This is a nickel titanium using shape memory alloys and self-expanding capability. And we go deploy this thing while the heart is beating. And then we come back with another catheter that is also threaded through the through the femoral vein, and we can go replace the heart valve just within this pre-stent. And this is done while the patient the heart is beating, and most often than not, these patients go home the following day. It is truly just a remarkable breakthrough technology. When you think of this disease stage, right, just in the US alone, every year, there are about 40,000 babies are born with a congenital heart defect. That's about 1% of the live births. And of those, at least 25% of these little babies have a issue with valvular disease or valvular defect. And by the time they are 15, 16 years old, they've gone through multiple open heart surgeries. Sometimes their first surgery is during the first week that they're alive. And they dread knowing that someday they will need another open heart surgery. They don't want a surgery. The surgeons want to go back in a second or third time. And so this transcatheter approach of threading a catheter with a valve and avoiding surgery. And we think these valves will probably last 10, 15 years. And there's another procedure called valve in a valve that we routinely use in the mitral and aortic position, which is to put another valve inside the transcatheter valve. So we think perhaps 20 plus years avoiding a surgery. Truly remarkable when you think about it. Just imagine that.
Yeah, that's another great example. Minimally invasive surgery has been, a mantra for a long time, and the industry keeps innovating and finding ways to make things smaller and change the procedure. And again, the 1 day turnaround, that's probably not the right wording, but the 1 day, the ability for the healthcare system to improve productivity under the speed of those types of operations and the accuracy and improved outcomes and reduced readmissions is really the key, in my opinion, of kind of improving care in a very win-win manner between the patient outcomes and the provider efficiency and effectiveness. So, it's another great example of technology continuing to evolve and make our system much better. Sylvie.
Hi, good morning. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself, so I'm going to first introduce myself and will present about our nominated product of Venovo. So my name is Sylvie Lombardi. I currently serve as a Director of Research and Development at BD in the BD International segment and also in the Peripheral Intervention Business Unit. In my role, I am responsible for new product development in the peripheral vascular disease platform, and it is an honor today to be in the discussion panel. So let's talk more about the product. So our product Venovo is a stent system that acts as a scaffold to keep the vein open and is intended to improve the blood flow in the leg. The objective of venous stenting is to prevent the development of post-thrombotic syndrome or to limit its progression. So what is post-thrombotic syndrome? It is a pretty serious condition that can result in lifelong pain, swelling, and in worst case situation, ulceration of the lower limb. Our product Venovo is specially indicated to treat symptomatic iliofemoral venous outflow obstruction caused by either non-thrombotic iliac vein lesion. This is in the case where the iliac vein is compressed by the iliac artery, and also with chronic deep vein thrombosis. So let me speak a little bit about the disease. So we are talking about venous thromboembolism, which include deep vein thrombosis, we call it DVT, and pulmonary embolism. Deep vein thrombosis is with the formation of a blood clot in the deep vein, usually in the leg, and pulmonary embolism is when the blood clot detached from the vein and travel to the lung and can block the vessel of the lung and can be also life-threatening. So venous thromboembolism has an incidence annually of 900,000 cases in the United States with 100,000 deaths per year. It is a huge healthcare burden in the US alone. It costs the healthcare system $2 to $10 billion annually. And another really significant problem, after the patient being diagnosed with DVT or PE, patients have 33% chance of recurrence within 10 years, and even 50% of patients will develop post-thrombotic syndrome. So this is a big problem in healthcare. So treatment options for DVT have been pretty limited for many years, and patients often go undiagnosed, and they are often young women. So typically, patients are treated with conservative medical management and also sometimes with compression stocking for just relieving the symptom. But unfortunately, 80% of the case, this therapy fails, and patients continue to live with the consequence of their DVT. So endovascular treatment was introduced over the last few decades as an alternative treatment with the use of stent. Prior to the introduction of dedicated venous stent, there were only stents for arterial use, which were used, but they led to, in some cases, to poor outcome. Why? Basically because vein and artery are very different. The veins are larger than artery, they are collapsible, they change the diameter, and there's also a presence of external force along the vein. So this means that the arterial stents were often undersized, they were not strong enough to hold the vein open, and they could even move or migrate, which result in poor blood flow, or they were even migrated to the heart, which is a life-threatening complication. So this explains the massive unmet need. At the time, we decided to develop the Venovo product, and this was a problem we selected to choose because we knew we could solve this problem. So back to the product, the Venovo is a nitinol self-expanding stent with a high radial force to treat the chronic obstruction from deep vein thrombosis, high crush resistant to overcome the compression for treating the non-thrombotic iliac vein lesion, and it's also flexible enough to overcome the vessel tortuosity and also the leg movement. We also designed a unique feature by flaring the end of the stent to help mitigate the risk of stent migration. So we had great clinical success since we launched the product. The 3-year follow-up data from our IDE clinical trial showed that the Venovo stent maintained high patency rate of 93.6% for the non-thrombotic iliac vein lesion patient and 70% for the post-thrombotic stent patient with no migration and no implant fracture, which are non-complications for venous stenting. And in addition, the Venovo stent demonstrates also significant improvement in the patient pain score and quality of life compared to the baseline. So we were very proud from the success of the Venovo device. With this device, we have provided physicians with a dedicated venous stent that changed their everyday venous practice, helps them to treat a multitude of venous pathology, and also improving patient care outcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sylvie. That's another excellent example of an innovation in very high need area. So thank you again for that input. And JP.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. And thank you, Sylvie, and to the fellow panelists for their introductions. You made a comment earlier, Tim, about, one-day turnaround, and that's actually not far from the truth with the direction of these minimally invasive therapies are going. We saw through the COVID era, there's also a disdain of patients to have to stay in the hospitals. So as a part of a company that enables cardiovascular therapies for these life-saving therapies that are saving patients from very risky open surgical procedures and doing catheter-based percutaneous interventions, we worked with a lot of healthcare practitioners, cath labs, and other stakeholders to say, how can we turn around patient throughput in such a way that they can go home the same day after patient care? And this is absolutely the future that we're looking forward to. So I'll give a little quick introduction about our product and how it was received in the marketplace and the innovation that we gave birth to a lot of these electrophysiology and structural heart procedures. But then I'd also like to make some comments on how we've learned through the innovation process some of the challenges we've encountered and what it means for all of us to participate and do our role in innovating in patient care. So as a bit of background, we come from Baylis Medical and been there for over 12 years, but as of this year, we were acquired by Boston Scientific as a part of their overall cardiology division. So it's important to note that Access Solutions is not actually a therapy, but we provide a means, a non-invasive means to provide access to the left atrium of the heart, where many of these structural heart and electrophysiology procedures are being delivered. So there's over 300,000 of these procedures in the US already this year, and this is a number that's expected to double inside of the next 3 years. So there's a huge shift in switching from surgical means, as Laxon mentioned, to do this percutaneously if we can. As it stands now, we're actually involved in more than half of those procedures, democratizing access to the heart to make sure it's safe, it's efficacious. But our major vision in innovation right now is how do we make sure these labs are as productive as they can be? How do we keep the physician, keep their day predictable, deliver the therapy on target, but also get that patient discharged? We can do that if we provide a very streamlined means to provide safe access in a way that's naturally integrated with all the other modalities in the lab, all the imaging modalities and all the trends in cardiac practice. As a real quick background, just so everyone appreciates the challenges involved in cardiac access, The fundamental problem, as Laxan mentioned, is you put a lot of these small catheters from the femoral veins or arteries into the heart. For electrophysiology procedures where you will burn or treat errant electrical muscle inside of the tissue of the left atrium, but there's a lot of technology in these small tubes. Like, we're talking about 28 French, 14 French, or 8 French, but some of these are almost the size of your pinky finger if you think about it. So how do you deliver that very carefully into the chambers of the heart? Historically, for the last 50 years, what operators used was a 1 meter long sharp metal needle that they inserted through your femoral vein. They lined it up into your atrial septum in your right atrium, and the premise is that you want to poke a hole into the left atrium of the heart without overshooting and puncturing something you don't want to. This is absolutely anxiety provoking to many physicians. You have a huge range of skill sets, but especially for your young attendings, this is the most nervous part of their day when they're delivering these therapies. There was a lot of complications, and these metal needles, they didn't really integrate with any of the trends of cardiac practice. So when it works, sometimes it works in 2 or 3 minutes, but other times it could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or not cross at all. So with the introduction of our RF transeptal technology, we developed a series of needles and now RF guide wires that are not sharp at all. They have the sharpness of about the tip of a ballpoint pen. This allows an operator to position it accurately inside of the cardiac anatomy, confirm all of this under imaging modalities where they want to cross, as that really dictates the efficacy of the therapy delivery. So when you position this ballpoint pen, kind of a blunt tip instrument up against the cardiac anatomy, you deliver a pulse of RF energy and you cross safely with a very high safety profile. So we democratized a lot of that user experience, and we've built on that with an RF wire-based platform such as the VersaCross. So to comment on a few of the innovative lessons that we've learned through this procedure is that we recognized early on we're not the therapy, but we've catalyzed those therapies. How do we design our transeptal tools, not just to make a hole in the heart, but how to deliver each of those therapies uniquely aligned with the needs of the heart team and that physician. So we've found a way to really optimize our therapy delivery to deliver some of those large sheaths, but just make it very predictable. How do we let the physician get the cardiac access, deliver those therapies, and wrap up the procedure in 20 minutes or 30 minutes instead of 2 to 4 hours? So I'll hand it back to you, Tim, but great to be here.
Great. JP, that's another great example. When I think of democratization or standardization, and as with any hospital system or physician within it or other care providers, there's a wide variety of knowledge and experience that gets applied. So the more that we make our products and offerings more simplistic, less complex, leveraging, whether you're talking robotic surgery, things of that sort that can allow more normalization of care across experts that are in the field, that is a great thing. We're combining the knowledge of multiple experts into any particular procedure is a great thing. Or population data compiled with personalized medicine is another key angle. I wanted to kind of talk about maybe moving to that direction a little bit with all of you. As we look at the future, and this, you all had great examples of what we've worked on, and we highlighted some of how that's different standard of care moving forward. But what do you see are some of the biggest disruptive, forces, technologies, innovations that are coming to bear in your product and service portfolio when you look out on like how care could be different in 5 or more years, and what is really going to drive that? Maybe Lynn, I would like to start with you, and maybe you can give me a little perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this conversation is just tremendous, and JP, great example again of how we're changing the pathway for these very unfortunate patients with these disease states. So love where this is going. So a couple of thoughts on my end. We're talking about a standardized care. So just if I can selfishly go back to the EBUS TBNA procedure and the product that we put forth for this award, EBUS TBNA, as I mentioned, it was born in the early 2000s, actually in the late 90s. And during that time, over the last, 2 decades now, hard to imagine, many clinical studies have occurred. You can actually go on PubMed and type in EBUS TBNA, and a lot of them will come up with obviously thought leaders who conducted these early studies. So much so that EBUS TBNA as a procedure was adopted into the American College of Chest Physicians as the best first test for staging the mediastinum. And actually now globally, it's referred to in many guidelines, for the diagnosis and staging of lung cancer. I actually just was in a CHEST last week, which was in Nashville. Great conference, first time live in 3 years. So it was great to see everybody. Got a cold for attending live, by the way, as we all will do these days as we're getting to meet everybody again. And there was tons of more citations of EBUS TBNA that it should be adopted as the test to stage the mediastinum. So as we look to the future, so where do we go from here? So the BFU C190, as I mentioned, was an evolution of a product that was in the market. And when we're talking about miniaturizing, so this product, it's hard to imagine. You mentioned the size of your pinky, so I related to that. This is a 6.6 outer diameter endoscope with an ultrasound tip that's going in the patient's trachea into the down into the airways to stage the mediastinum. So where do we go from here? Because it's hard to imagine it being any smaller, but the future will take us to actually being even more miniaturized than that. Lung cancer often starts in the periphery of the lung. And the method to diagnose those early lung tumors, the actual recommended standard of care is a transthoracic needle aspiration through the chest wall. Unfortunately, that can carry a high complication rate, and I quote from the literature, up to 25 even more %. Patients, who can develop a pneumothorax. Remember, these patients are sick. Already they have a lung condition. So we don't want to compromise that patient even further. So where we go from here is a minimally invasive test going deeper and deeper into the lungs that allows real-time visualization, not just of the tumors, but as the device, the needle penetrates the endobronchial wall into the lymph node or into the tumor. That's where the future is taking us. And I'm very proud to say at Olympus, that's exactly where we're looking at for the future as well. So that's where we see it. And then one more thing I would say on either side of that, we sit firmly in the middle today of detection and treatment. That's what our technology does. But if we can partner with other companies for liquid biopsy, risk stratification to ensure that these patients get funneled into the system to ensure accurate diagnosis and staging earlier, so that we reduce that poor prognosis that we're seeing today of these patients who are often diagnosed at stage 4 or later of lung cancer. So that's where we visualize the future at Olympus, and happy to be a part of that, of course. So thank you.
Love it, Lynn. I love the miniaturization and then detection, treatment, but then moving further up that pathway. If we look at bending the cost curve and improving outcomes, they go hand in hand, in my opinion. The further we get upstream to treat, that's what's going to make the difference. We're getting things way too late stage where it's very costly and complicated, and frankly, there's only so much you can do with the outcomes at that point in time, and we're doing our best. But if we can get even earlier, we're even better off. So I love it. So maybe I'll go to you, Sylvie.
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, for us, we are looking at the venous disease. We need to understand, because we are dealing with a young patient. So we need to really, I think the next step to understand the mechanism of this stent restenosis, because over time there's restenosis, rethrombosis. So a better understanding of those mechanisms will help to develop the next generation of stent drug coating. We believe that we may focus on the dedicated drug coating to improve the long-term patency rate for venous stenting. This will be one of the steps, but I think moving forward, looking more in the next 10 years. So I think we are also looking at the regenerative medicine because, right now, as you mentioned, we are really focusing on treatment. But, the ideal will be to really cure, just, with, replacing tissue or organ that have been damaged by the disease will be, in fact, changing the paradigm here. Instead of treating, we are curing. And I think there's really a lot of tool in the medicine, regenerative medicine, like tissue engineering, more biomaterial, cellular therapy, medical device, and also artificial organ. There's a great spectrum here where we could really do and improve efficiency of treatment here by focusing to really much of the curing step. But I think there's a lot of challenge. There's a long run here, but I think if we look at the future, this is also pretty an exciting technology there.
Yeah, I that's great. I mean, yeah, we not only can fix the issue, but we can reverse the damage. That would be a great thing in many disease states, right?
Yeah.
Heidi, how about you? What do you think the future holds?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So at GT Medtech, our purpose is to improve the lives of patients with brain tumors. So we're very passionate about it, and we've impacted again over 700 patients thus far. So we've really taken a close look about how can we make an even greater impact, right? How can we help additional patients? How can we get the word out? How can we leverage our intellectual property and expand upon these solutions? And so one of those solutions that we're looking at is, minimally invasive surgery. And we do have different, what we call form factors. So beyond that 2 by 2 centimeter tile, we have gamma dots, we have gamma spheres, gamma stars, gamma gores, and all of these are they were invented to serve different applications. Tumors look different in different anatomical regions, and with different histologies. So, we're looking at different form factors. We are looking at form factors that can be delivered minimally invasive. And we're also doing proof of concept studies for shielding. So integrating shielding either on top of the tile or integrated into wrapped seeds, so that this will allow dose shaping, which is really important. As you might know, tumors can land really closely to other organs at risk. So especially intracranially, we're concerned about the optic nerve, optic chiasm, and brainstem are some of the organs at risk. And so if the tumor is too close, it can't really be fully resected very easily. And we also might want to protect that organ at risk. So shielding will really allow us to treat additional patients that otherwise couldn't get a localized radiation treatment to that space. And then last but not least, we're also looking at extracranial opportunities. So, currently we're focused on brain tumors, but spine tumors, they oftentimes can't be radiated a second time because the spinal cord has already received too much dose. And so we're looking at different form factors with shielding as well. We've done many cadaver studies with a lot of leading cancer institutions across the country to help us understand those use cases and how can we develop a solution, a surgically targeted radiation solution to help those patients as well.
Very good. Very, very, very great examples, again, of expanding around the adjacency of portfolio and frankly, just making the outcomes much more effective. So, JP, you have an example? What do you think the future holds? Cardiac.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I love these examples. And so just building on some of the examples provided by my fellow panelists, there's a few different lenses, actually, that we look through about what the future holds. And we kind of look at these, again, from the patient perspective, what this means for our physicians, our stakeholders, and the whole heart team, but also, the more macro environment, the economics that we all have to face as a reality in a cost-constrained healthcare system. But if we look at the patients, overall, the trend for us is in earlier treatment. In atrial fibrillation, which may affect about 6 million people in the US, if you let that disease state progress too far, it's beyond cure. So there's more and more literature and studies that are coming out that are saying, get the atrial fibrillation early. The patients have the best chance of basically a quality of life improvement and stroke mitigation, and it prevents that patient from being on long-term anticoagulation. So you can't let that disease state go on too long. Otherwise, it's very tough to cure, and then they're on a lifetime of anticoagulation. So the therapy awareness element is a huge part of how we think through our portfolio strategy. And then when you look at the physician elements of this, Heidi, you gave great examples about X-ray and fluoroscopy safety for the patients. But what we also hear through a lot of our physicians as well, we're using a lot of X-ray. I might be doing 300 procedures this year, and every single one of them, I have an X-ray to visualize the tools inside of the patient's anatomy. I'm also wearing a lead apron all day. So there's the orthopedic issue. I'm going to have back pain at the end of the day. And how am I going to have a 30-year career where I can treat the most patients if I'm wearing a lead all day and I can't stand up? Additionally, for the patients, they're also exposed to a lot of unnecessary anesthesia as well as X-ray. So how can we eliminate that? Our access tools are a big part of reducing that non-emergent use of X-ray and streamlining with the imaging modalities of tomorrow. And Lynn, you had a really great point about, those partnerships. We can't do things if we're siloed. Access isn't done for the sake of access. It's only to deliver a therapy. And the way a lot of cardiac procedures are done right now is you use one tool set, maybe one vendor or one set of technologies for access. You stop, you put a placeholder, you remove everything, and then you go in and deliver therapy. It's extremely wasteful. There's a lot of unnecessary materials that are going in and out of the bloodstream, and it's just unnecessary patient delays. So how do we integrate access with the imaging modalities as well as the therapy? Let's remove all those unnecessary steps and devices from the patient. This means ultimately coming to the third point about the macroeconomics of the procedures. If we integrate our technologies in a future state with all of the therapies, it's safer, it's streamlined, and can be more cost effective in the long run. So thank you, Tim.
That's great. I mean, a number of great points brought up on that, and you're getting into earlier in the pathway on any particular disease, and a lot of things we're talking about is late stage identification and treatment. You move earlier stage, and sometimes we're into more of the maybe they've gotten some early comorbidity identification, and that could lead as a risk factor into the diseases you're talking about, but even going through the drug pathway. So a lot of things that we're seeing in kind of the strategies of our medtech clients is thinking about that whole continuum. And then because you're not good at all aspects of that continuum, how do you partner to develop solutions and integrate and manage that pathway in a different way so that we do keep the people from having that advanced disease progression and do something about it? I really like that theme. Laxon, what's going on in your world here now?
I'm here at Edwards Life Sciences. We're a structural heart company, and we obsess about finding non-invasive solutions for these structural heart patients. We've got programs in aortic and mitral and tricuspid disease as well. And with our SAPIEN 3 family of valves, we've treated over 800,000 patients in over 40 plus countries. And the other thing that we do here at Edwards is we do really pioneering clinical studies. So over 6,000 patients have been studied in registries or clinical studies. And we are now at a point where we are not just doing clinical studies for devices, we are studying the disease state itself. And that's pretty big. And when you think in terms of the lifetime management of these patients, right? Not just one procedure, but we are thinking of durability, of extending durability of these heart valves, perhaps synthetic leaflets and implantable sensors that communicate with physicians, maybe through an app on your phone, or maybe using artificial intelligence algorithms to diagnose patients. And at the end of the day, Tim, I think, and I feel, every one of these panelists would agree, it really comes back to the patients. And I just want to take 1 minute to tell you about our Altera patient, our very first Altera patient. I had a chance to meet with her. She must have been in her late 20s. She told me she remembers having open heart surgery at 8. And she said, I try not to think about it, but I know I'm going to need one. And it's in the back of my mind. It's always there. So she consented to be the first patient for this non-invasive pulmonic valve replacement. And she said she was so scared that it took another month for her to schedule the case. Here in Los Angeles, Cedars-Sinai, Dr. Evan Zahn did the procedure. She came in the morning on a Friday. Procedure was done. She said she woke up from anesthesia and she saw the clock on the wall. And she said she was saddened because she thought she didn't get the valve because the procedure, time was so fast. Saturday, she went home. On Sunday, she felt so good. She went for a really long walk. And on Monday, she went back to work. She worked for Disney, part of the Imagineering group. And so I asked her, I said, what was your first day back like? She said, Watson, I spent the entire day convincing people that I got a heart valve replaced on Friday. And so, as you know, each of you gave examples of the impact to patients. And I think at the end of the day, we must never forget how all of these therapies impact these patients.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. And, I think of my career starting out, and I could have gone a few different directions. This is, let's just say 25 plus years to date myself a little bit. And I remember I working with one of the cardiovascular companies at the time. And what I realized we did, a patient kind of roadshow of like how people couldn't walk and now they could, and all these other things with cardiovascular issues. And that was what struck me. And I use this to today. It's like you can work a lot of different places and do a lot of different things with all the talented people we have here. But those types of stories don't happen in a lot of other industries. So I really appreciate all of the kind of, stories and the innovations that have been shared here today. I think it's just a great example of where the industry is heading and how we keep progressing. It's kind of like Moore's law for semiconductor. It's never really stopped. We keep going and going and going, and we're bringing in new things all along in the core therapeutic areas, how we're working across therapies, and how we're bringing in, you had mentioned, AI and artificial intelligence, machine language, and bringing in connected products in ways that we're just touching the tip of the spear. And I really feel that we're going to have an opportunity here. Part of this discussion was going to be systems engineering. Well, it's the ultimate in systems engineering. It's our core products are adjacencies. How do others in the ecosystem participate? Not just our direct competitors or pharma companies, others in life sciences, but how are we, working with other parts of other industries, whether it's our pharmaceutical retail segment or, our high tech segment, as we're seeing kind of approaching this from different angles. This is really the kind of future and where we're heading. So absolutely enjoyed the conversation. And I think we have just about 7 minutes. If I look at to go, I'll just open it up to if any of you have any additional closing thoughts for the audience that, kind of a quick one-liner might be good to just kind of wrap it up.
So I'll just chime in real quick. This has been a tremendous education as well as opportunity to be a part of this. I think from my perspective, I think if we can all get out of bed every day thinking of the patient and their caregivers, then I think industry will serve that community well in the future. And in order to do that, the products, the devices, and so forth that we bring to market need to be clearly efficacious, well-studied, and pave the pathway to greater things in the future. That's one thing. And then secondly, I think one thing that I've learned over my fairly extensive career now in med devices, most companies cannot do it alone. I think partnership is critical in order to bring those best devices to market as well. I think, that's just a couple of thoughts from my perspective.
Thank you.
Partnership, I think, is key.
And from the Edward side here, think of all the products that were showcased this morning by our panelists, right? This stuff is not easy. They can take 10 years to go from concept to commercialization. Sometimes technology has to be invented, materials have to be invented, and the test models don't exist. And I remember when we were working on Altera, we had a test failure, and it was a pretty dramatic failure that sent us back to the drawing boards. But I remember a couple of my engineers coming to me and telling me that they're not done. They will never give up. They said they will never give up ever till this thing is figured out. And I think that's a little bit of the attitude, right, that we need to have as we work on these very complicated products, trying to make them non-invasive and thinking about not just about the implanting physician or the heart team, but the patient as well.
That's great input.
I really like that, Laxon. And just building on that, this is hard, and beyond just establishing a device that's safe, efficacious, and meets, FDA standards, we work with very discerning physicians. They need the evidence, but they also need the user experience. It has to be satisfying, intuitive, and a fun, platform to interact with. This is their bread and butter. They are steadfast, worried about the patient. So how do we really unlock value together? That's, working with the engineering teams. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's patient first and not resting on our laurels. We've established a standard of care, but that means for today. The environment's going to change. There's going to be new modalities. There's going to be new therapeutic means that we can catalyze. So how do we stay ahead of that? And that's what really drives the innovative spirit with us.
Great. Thanks, JP.
Yeah, now we have to that too. I mean, I would say, we have so many challenges in the healthcare, aging of the population, lack of healthcare resources. There is a need to really have more efficient therapy. But the thing, as Laxon was mentioning, time to market. So I think there's a lot of challenges we need to cross through. But I think the future looks bright. There are so many technology that are being developed, and I feel confident that the future we will have better, efficient technology, and we have no choice. So, yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you, Sylvie.
Yeah, I echo the comments of all of those on the panel that have already spoken. I think if we continue focusing on the patient and the totality of the patient, right? So that's, yes, of course, the primary outcomes, the safety and efficacy, but also their quality of life and reducing their side effects. That's something that our product is a real value proposition with our product. Time to implants, the last 5 minutes of a brain tumor resection, instead of the patient having to come back for 6 weeks for external beam radiation therapy. We're helping the patient, but we're also helping their caregiver. So I think as long as we all continue to focus on kind of that value proposition for the patient and look at them as a person, and how are we, giving them a better life, quality of life, and ideally longer life, I think we'll continue to make all the right decisions in what we invest in for the future. So thank you for letting us be part of this panel.
Great, thank you, Heidi. I appreciate all of your guys' contributions today. I think this is again been a very, learning experience for myself, and thinking about the patient at the end here, I think, is the absolute way to put the exclamation point on it. And I think what we heard today is it's not the patient only when we treat them and they leave the hospital. It's their journey they're going to take from there on that we're now also managing. And we also talked about the patient before they're even really a patient, in what we can be doing to think about backing up into their care pathway, or even, disease risk stratification that would get us even before we even know that they're a patient or a potential patient. I think those are great ways to end this, and absolutely appreciate all the contributions of this panel, and hope everyone else had gotten something good out of it. On that, I think we're at a close.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.